I would say to you the number one thing is their level of emotional fitness. Now, their emotional fitness, though, can be determined by a lot of things. But the most basis of it is how you feel emotionally. It has to do basically with your psychology, doesn't it? Your mindset, your model of the world, the way you interpret what things mean. Because meaning produces emotion. Change somebody's psychology, you can change their life. Don't do that, nothing else changes. I have a friend who just made a documentary called The War Tapes. She was offered to go to Iraq and to be embedded with the members of the National Guard or whatever it was in the state she was in. And she said, you know what I want to do instead? I want to give the troopers cameras and let them shoot. If you haven't seen this documentary, it's unbelievably intense and beautiful because it shows war at all the levels of it. You see the humanity of it, the inhumanity of it, shot through these men's eyes. But the reason I tell you this story is I asked her what moved her most, and she said there was one man she followed up with who was blown up, and she went to the hospital to see him. And she said, Tony, she said, just brought tears to my eyes because I walked in and he had this big smile on his face and his left arm is gone. And she said, I sat down with him, he was sitting at the table and we started talking and she said, I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe he's on drugs, maybe he's in shock, maybe he's just trying to put on a good front. And she said, he was genuinely grateful to be alive and happy and grateful to God. And she said, well, why? And he said, because I'm a righty. But here's the killer piece of what she told me. She said they talked for an hour and a half. She said she left feeling stupid about the things she feels bad about in her life and feeling so grateful she'd been with this man. And at the end, he pushed away from the table and he had no legs. He lost his legs and his arm. All he mentioned was he's a righty. Didn't even talk about the legs. So most of us are unfit emotionally, which means something in our psychology has made us weak. Part of it is, how do you build the muscles? Push through difficult times. And most of us today in our society, what we think is difficult would be somebody else's idea of the greatest dream on this earth. And people have forgotten that. So they get bitchy and whiny and complaining about the littlest stupid things. So we got to start with ourselves. So let's learn about your psychology first, shall we? Let's do a little test. Pull your hands out like this. And when I say now, bring them together like this. When I say now. But I like people who anticipate. That's good. Ready? Now. Ready? Now. Ready? Now. Keep your hands together. Extensive psychological research over 35 years has shown something interesting. Just like in relationships, we develop patterns we're not even noticing. Like no matter how many times I pull your hands apart and bring them together, you'll usually have the exact same thumb that you'll drop on. If your left thumb is on top of your right thumb, research shows that the driving force in your psychology is the desire for sex and you're an incredible lover. If, however, when you brought your hands together and put them back on top, if your right thumb is on top of your left thumb, then the driving force in your psychology is the desire to be intelligent and you will make a difference and be financially free in your lifetime. So for you and I, when it comes to this idea of problems, just remember, no one is going to get by without experiencing extreme stress in their life. No one. I remember I did business with some people for many years and thought they were my friends, and unfortunately, I get a phone call one day from the CFO of that company saying, I'm leaving the company, and Tony, I have to tell you, your partners have been screwing you for 5 years. And they've given you false financials. Here's how they've done it. I can't, in good conscience, stay with a company knowing they did that to you, and I want to tell you about this. So long story short, I confronted these people. First I said, I'm sure you didn't do it deliberately. Please look it up and fix it. They dragged out because tens of millions of dollars. I finally had to sue them. It was one of the worst experiences I can remember ever happened. And yet, I grew from that at such different levels. And years later, I just forgave them, moved on. I got most of my money back, walked away from it, still stayed friendly with them because I was like, I don't want to carry grudges. What good is that? That doesn't help me. It's like, when people say, I'm going to resent this person, I'm going to hate this person, resenting somebody, hating somebody is like, taking poison in your own body and expecting someone else to die, right? It's the one that's hurting you. So I was like letting go, and then I get this phone call from one of these people, and he's telling me about his child who has this severe, rare disease. And here's this man who's made $1 billion, and a lot of it's done well, and in my mind, some of it wasn't so well, and yet he still got pain. So what does extreme stress look like? It sounds like this. Somebody in your family with cancer or heart disease. So many of you are reading your stories like that are going through that right now, or have recently, or have lost someone. because 1 out of 3 people get cancer, 1 or 2 die of heart disease, right? It's going to touch all of us at some stage. That's not being negative, it's just what is. Now, in your lifetime, people around you are going to experience stress. Someone's going to have a burglary, or horrifically, maybe be raped, or your home's going to burn down, or you're going to lose your job, or somebody you love is going to die, or move away, or separate. Aren't you glad you showed up for this positive seminar this afternoon? But it's true, right? So the key is not stress. Here's the key. We got to learn to use our stress, not let stress use us, just like technology. Learn how to use your stress, not let stress use you. And here's what extreme stress does if you can get through it. Like, I have a friend who was in Vietnam, and he was locked up for 7 years in North Vietnam in a communist prison. And they literally put him in isolation, he and so many other people, put him on a cell where the floor was like on an angle like this, chained his feet up here, and wouldn't let him go to the bathroom. So he'd pee and the acids would run down his back and burn his skin off. They abused him in every way. 7 years. And I used to bring him to speak to my audiences because I always want people to realize you have no problems. What you think is a problem, someone else would love to have. Your worst problem is somebody else's dream. And so sure enough, he'd speak, people would be deeply moved. But I remember seeing one time when the IRS came after him, and he wasn't even slightly stressed. He goes, Tony, I've had the North Vietnamese doing this to me. What do you think the IRS is going to possibly do to me? So here's what extreme stress does when you push through it. And we all got to push through it because most of us have it right now. The world has it. 3 things, jot them down if you don't mind. Number 1, you're going to discover how strong you really are.
How do you get better? How do you know, listen, I was good today, but I want to be great? What are the metrics you use? I mean, is there data you get back? How do you improve?
Well, we have all the social media data, which we use big data to take a look at, but I also look at it individually because there's nuances that you pick up in that way. So I feed that, look at that. But my biggest piece is watching the audience, and then, every day of my life, I get feedback. I'm walking down the street, a dozen people come and tell me these beautiful stories, how their life has changed. And very much like she shared earlier, they'll give me way too much credit. So I always straighten out and go, look, you did this. I'm glad I got to help. And I try to keep that balance with everybody. But my measurement is both emotional state impact as well as execution. Did they lose 20 pounds? Did they go turn their business around? My business is organized around, I really want to help people improve all the areas of their life, but there's about 7 that matter the most. It's your body, it's your emotions, it's your relationships, it's the way you manage time, it's finances, it's your work, and it's the spiritual side of life. And so what I spent my life doing is modeling people that are the best in the world. You find a couple who've been together for 65 years in their 80s, late 80s, and they're still making love and passionate, not just hanging out. They're not lucky, they're doing something different. So I'm constantly finding those patterns so that hopefully I can compress decades into days. I can learn from those decades of life experience, save it, bring the answer here to myself and others, and see a measurable impact. I really believe in order to influence people, you got to know what already influences them. The mistake that we make is we don't connect enough to figure out who this person is, and what most of us do is try to lead other people by influencing them the way we'd be influenced. They try to influence their kid to clean the room the way that would make you do it. But even though they're your kid, they're different than you. And so they're going to do it for a different set of reasons than what you would do it for. You might have done it because someone told you to, but your kids, you tell them all day long, that's not it. There has to be something else. It's a sense of freedom they get from it, or a sense of mastery, something that's going to move them. So I always say there are 2 things that influence everyone. And if you want to be a leader, you have to know how to change other people's states. A person is in a no state, a person's in an angry state, a person's in a frustrated state. You have to be able to influence their state, because if you change their state, you're going to change the result they get. But the second thing you have to understand is, what are people's blueprints? Blueprints my shorthand for what are their values? What do they believe? What do they fear? I always say to people that life is found in the dance between what you desire most and what you fear most. If I want to lead you and support you, I got to know your goals, your desires. I got to know what you're scared about, what you're fearful about, what stresses you out. And if I understand that, I can communicate in a way that'll inspire you to maximize, not only when I'm here, that's management. Leadership is I'm gone, and you've raised your own standard, and you're going to continue to perform at a higher level.
There are so many experts in the health field. I consider myself to be one as well. In fact, I'm doing a book right now called Life Force, where I've actually done what I did in the financial category. If you read Money Master the Game or Unshakable or the new book, The Path, you know that what I did is, after 2008 and the crash, I was so upset by it because I worked with one of the top 10 financial traders in history, Paul Tudor Jones. I've coached him for over 24 years. And so I know a lot in this area, more than most humans will ever know. But I also have access. And I thought, what if I interviewed 50 self-made billionaires, people that started from scratch and built it, and then figure out what they did so I could teach that to some of my highest end clients. Even my other billionaire clients would find interest, but also somebody just starting the journey would as well. So I wrote that 674-page poem, and then I did Unshakable to give people something to be able to read even briefer to make that happen. And then the path to kind of update where things are going. Well, that's what I'm doing now on regenerative medicine. Because there are things coming out right now in the next 2 and 3 years, and some that have just are available on a small scale now, that would blow your mind. Like, for example, if you know anybody with Parkinson's and you know how brutal that is, just somebody who can't even grab a glass, the whole body is that way. There's a company that does literally incisionless brain surgery. They use a super high intensity array that goes through the skull, and they find the exact spot, the nerves that are making the body shake, and it stops. The entire process takes 2 hours to set it up, but it's done in 15 minutes. And if you've ever seen somebody who's had those ear implants where they can hear for the first time and they cry uncontrollably, you can't even imagine what it's like when somebody can just reach out, grab the glass and drink it, and they're not shaking. They cry uncontrollably. It's an incredible breakthrough. There are tools like stem cells that I'm sure you've heard about, and stem cells in the US are kind of Wild West. You gotta be so careful what you do here. But there is new science on stem cells that's making a gigantic difference. I personally, my right shoulder I tore in a very intense and stupid snowboarding accident. I went with some 20-year-olds and tried to do the things they were doing and snowboarded all the time. It was not pretty, right? And they told me, yeah, it's gonna be surgery, it's gonna be 6 months of rehab, and the pain was just so severe, the nerves were trapped. And so I tried a bunch of different things. I was like, there's no way, I'm not gonna do this. And so I ended up doing stem cells. I went out of the country, I went to a place in Panama, and I wrote about it in the book, and in one session, that's it, one session, and my shoulder was perfect. I'm not exaggerating. It's mind-boggling what's coming. So this new book will really put kind of the focus on that. So I feel like I'll have expertise, but along the way, I've met some of the most brilliant Nobel Prize winners, brilliant breakthrough people in cancer, heart disease, everything you can imagine. But not everybody's a good communicator of that, right? Most aren't. They're geniuses in what they do, but they can't communicate it. And so when I was thinking about, like, who do I bring to the general public that I think really has a voice that keeps it simple and that you can feel their warmth and their love, and they're not cerebral, but yet they're brilliant. There's one man that stands out for me, and his name is Anthony William. You've probably heard about him because celebrities all around the world go to him. And what I wanted to do is introduce you to him this morning briefly and have him talk for just 15, 20 minutes and give you a couple of things you could do in the morning between now and when you get to the UPW. I know most of you are coming. Yesterday was our biggest sales day ever, so really excited to have all of you there. And so something you can do, or if you're not coming to the event, something you just start doing at home. Just a couple of simple things that really work, and you will feel the difference right away.
When my brother knew that it would require work for him to get off drugs, that most people won't participate in their own rescue. And there are people who will be presented with an opportunity, who know that they could be laid off at any moment, who know that there's no such thing as job security, who know that them keeping their job has nothing to do with how good they are. And yet and still, they'll go to work and have knots in their stomachs, hoping when they open up an email that they have not been told this is your last day. They'll go to work hoping there's not a security guard standing by their desk with a box and say, empty your things in here and take them to the front door and escort them to the parking lot. They go in there hoping it doesn't happen. Why? Because they don't want to do the work.
You walk into an airport and you see people behind the desk or whatever, rather than being pros, owning the game, you literally see them chit-chatting, or again, looking at videos of dancing cats and people riding bicycles off the roofs of their houses. You know what I'm talking about. I call it the collective deprofessionalization of business. Very few people, relatively speaking right now, say, this is my craft. I've got to be a pro. I've got to study the audiobooks that relate to my game. I've got to find mentors. I've got to read the books I've got to practice like Federer or Serena Williams or Muhammad Ali used to practice. You know what Muhammad Ali once said? He said, I hated every single one of those early morning runs, but I loved the idea of being champion of the world.
And contrary to that, envision what you will feel like later when you let the discipline slack. You know the feeling. Feeling weak and defeated, and you know that you're falling behind. So get to know those two different types of feelings and ask yourself which one you want to feel in 10 minutes or in a half an hour. When the thing is done, when the discipline has been implemented.
Because there's an idea in Christianity that you should pick up your goddamn cross and like walk up the hill. And that's dramatically, that's correct. That's the right answer. It's like, you've got a heavy load of suffering to bear, and a fair bit of it's going to be unjust. So what are you going to do about it? Accept it voluntarily and try to transform as a consequence. That's the right answer. It's the right answer. Because the rest of it is tribalism. And we're too technologically powerful to get all tribal again.